Hi, this is Vanessa Van Alstine, and this is Art, I Swear, a short copyright edition. So there's been a lot of stink on YouTube recently about people taking down other people's videos because of copyright infringement. Usually it's studios like Studio Ghibli that doesn't want negative reviews about their product to exist. Though I question whether or not it's actually the negative review aspect that's the problem, or if it's international copyright law not translating to national copyright law. But there are American studios that are having the same problem. They just haven't been as aggressive sometimes. I say that and they take down anything with Jurassic Park on it. But I thought, since I've worked obtaining copyright permissions for nonprofit academic publications, I could probably shed a little bit of a light on what's going on here and why this is such a stink. In United States copyright law, there are exemptions that are considered fair use, which means you don't have to pay royalties to use images, sound bites, or video recordings of existing for-profit work that has not become part of a widows and orphans clause, aka public domain. That sounds really boring, but what it basically means is if I'm reviewing something, if I'm educating people or something, or I am parodying something, I have a certain level of protection, and some of this is assumed that I am doing so on behalf of a nonprofit institution, which is why universities and schools can get away with Xerox copying a whole lot of paperwork. And that's where the first part of this copyright thing becomes a problem, is a lot of the people operating on YouTube, like myself, we're monetizing through YouTube ads. I have ad stage on my webpage. I haven't chosen to go the Patreon route because frankly I'm small pennies and I don't think anybody will care. But if you're making a profit off of any kind of visual or sound medium, those people want their money. And that's one of the things I've come across in the past when I'm working for these nonprofit academic publications, researching copyright and obtaining permissions, is even though they are nonprofit books, they exist solely for educational value, and the artists will probably profit off this, whereas the writer is very unlikely to. People still want their money. They don't ask any questions. They don't offer discounts because you can get $250 to $500 per image for about 1,000 run print in a book. That doesn't sound like a whole bunch of money up front, especially when you're looking at artworks or films that gross in the millions. Did I mention I live under an airport? I don't know if you can hear the plane, but I live under an airport. So, for example, Jurassic Park that has made millions and millions of dollars. Why would they want you to pay $500 for a film still? And that's what most studios, and I've worked with movie studios for these books, want for these films. Well, when you look at how many people write about films, especially these large-scale blockbuster productions, you're talking about a significant amount of additional revenue. So part of the problem here is just gross cash and not entirely the negative aspect of the reviews. When it comes to the negative review aspect, I'm going to point out here, that's probably a marketing department. They usually handle reputation management aspects. And I say this as somebody that works as a social media marketing consultant and does web reputation management. If you want to throw your weight behind something and get that negative bit of information taken down. Well, a lot of companies do. I argue that the best thing you can do is to listen, pay attention, and respond, because your customers are actually out there on the web telling you everything you need to do to improve. However, for some reason, when it comes to Hollywood or major movie studios or music record labels, they don't want to listen. They want to think that they know what the public wants and continue to cater to them like they did back in the 90s and previous, which is really unfortunate because they're missing out on major pieces of revenue by just blocking stuff and turning off what would otherwise be brand advocates. I'm thinking about especially the Nostalgia Critic and some of his reviews on Studio Ghibli, who did Howl's Moving Castle and Kiki's Delivery Service. He didn't really say bad things. He did have some criticism, and you're going to have legitimate critical points of any piece of film or media that's created. And that voice can not only improve your product, improve your brand, but give guidance to the people that are now learning how to create these artistic mediums that are going to become part of our culture and world culture. The other problem I think is happening here, and I went through and I read the official English translation of Japanese copyright law to look at why people like Nintendo and Studio Ghibli are going after people on the internet like they are, or think that they have a right to censor people. And when you start looking at their copyright law, they don't have the exemptions that American copyright law does. They have some really weird articles on things that have not been released yet. Like I think they're very, very concerned with leaks, but not as concerned with appropriate cultural criticism. And some of this, I might have missed the part. I had to skim some of it because, man, it's about as exciting as it sounds. But they do have some very strong wording about how Japanese creations need to stay within the bounds of Japanese copyright, because it seems like they feel very sternly that the Japanese Copyright Office has what's best at heart for Japanese products. So if you're getting bad takedowns from a Japanese company, I'd actually just suggest filtering Japan out of your YouTube results, but because they have to have an American office that's kind of keeping an eye on this stuff, but that might be the first step in getting them to calm down a little bit. And I hate to say that because, you know, I feel like criticism in media should exist for the whole world. If you speak the same language I do, you have a right to communicate with me if I'm putting myself out there. But, you know, when we're talking about multi-million-dollar mega blockbusters and expensive pieces of art or music, we're not talking about a realm where common sense exists anymore, or fairness. Also, I'm not a lawyer. I just like to remind you guys that. I'm a stinking art major that just has a lot of experience. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about like just a couple of art copyright issues, just because I am an art history podcast, and, you know, it might be interesting to see what has constituted fair use and what has not in the past. The first person I'm going to talk about is Jeff Koons. He's an American artist who's in his like 50s or 60s now and was very big in like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Still is pretty big. You might have seen some of his giant balloon animal sculptures out on the street. He also did a giant flower puppy. And puppies are actually the first place he gets in hot water. He did this series of sculpture early on that wanted to capture kitsch. So he would take what he considered really kitschy imagery and that is lowbrow, crudely made items and translate them into these giant bisque porcelain statues. And one of these was a photograph made by Art Rogers that was entitled Puppies. And it's two people holding a whole bunch of puppies sitting on a bench. Koons didn't alter this very much. He took a black and white photo, colorized it, made the doggies blue, and blew it up pretty true to life. When we're looking at pieces of artwork, we want to consider how much of it was altered. And I want to say 25 to 27% is the magic number here. And when I say altered, it needs to be recontextualized so it means something it no longer did, or that it has adopted a new cultural consideration. And these are very arbitrary things most of the time, but when you're verbatim copying something, that's what you're violated. This is where people get takedowns for fan art, or you also might be asking at this point, who owns copyright? Unless it is a for-hire work, like a film, like a video game, like a written article where you've signed away your rights in a contract, which is why you read contracts, OMG. You own the copyright to your work. As long as you can prove you worked on it, it's yours. But, you know, the 20% rule, it's gonna still apply. Even if you just did it in your basement and took a Instagram photo, you still own the right to that work and your Instagram photo. And Koons lost out on the puppy one. I think he had to pay a whole bunch of money to the guy and agreed not to distribute the statue. Another one was Syndicate versus Koons, where in the same series of statues, he blew up a giant Jim Davis Odie, like Odie from Garfield, the like weird little dog that's dumb as a stump. And this is, once again, it's a very blatant copy. The art title was called Wild Boy and Puppy. There's even a pretty exact image he pulled from. There's also a troll doll in it. And that's That's going to get you in trouble. You didn't alter it enough, Jeff. You owe a whole bunch of money. Davis won that one. It wasn't considered transformative enough. There is one he won, however, which was a photograph of 2 sandals made by Gucci that was a photograph taken by Andrea Blanche. And this photograph, it's just a pair of feet with some very expensive sandals on them, leaning on a blue sofa. His picture, I think it said Niagara, he's brought together several feet like this, put it over a wood stump in a painting, and there's like donuts and food down at the bottom, and there's like a landscape. He actually won this suit, but it's because the feet are just one of many. They're repositioned, and the context of the feet are completely different. They're not just showing off and selling sandals anymore. They're actually taking on a different transformative use that is no longer entirely referential. Now, I'd also like to point out that he, in all of these cases, took things from one media and put it into a different kind. He took 2 from print media, like photography and newspaper, and made them into sculpture. And then he took a photograph and made that into a painting. So it's not just the transformation into another set of media that counts. It's actually what that says about it. Another artist that got the pantsuit off of him repeatedly, and this might not be to anybody's surprise, is Andy Warhol. One of the ones that stuck was he took a photograph of a big flower and made a bunch of prints of it. He did alter it significantly. It's that offset, like 3-color print that he usually did. However, he lost the suit because the courts argued that it wasn't enough of a commentary and it wasn't transformative. What's really sad in this suit is the woman was offered either a full set of these Warhol prints, or I think it was like $150,000. Those Warhol prints now are worth, tens of millions of dollars. Her family would be banking if she had taken them, but she didn't. I'm kind of hoping that by talking about some of these actual art world suits that have occurred, you get an idea of how copyright law is supposed to protect the original person and how it's blown up in some artist's face before in a really big way, and kind of see how some of this YouTube nonsense that's going on is a little bit ridiculous. For example, there's a YouTube fellow who's I Hate Everything, which is a Transmetropolitan reference. He made a video on that, I'm going to curse here, the Damn Daniel fad that's going on right now. And apparently I could have this video down for saying, "Damn Daniel, rocking it in them white vans." That, once again, really iffy copyright there. And if you're just making a commentary on it, that shouldn't be able to come down. But YouTube has kind of a broken system. And it's interesting to look at that right now and see how that's kind of affecting people that make money off of YouTube and just culture in general. I'm rambling again. This is Vanessa Van Alstyne, and thank you for listening to Art, I Swear.